So Lyle and I just finished recording about 15 minutes with the conversation, in which we were reflecting. We began by reflecting on what it felt like to undergo this collision, either performed or enacted, and led us in a pretty great discussion, I thought. And then I clicked a button that deleted it, which is we decided to, as quickly as possible, redocument this question and the frustration on our faces. It's sort of inherent with this. You know, if we're going to be brutally reflexive about this and like filming ourselves, then we thought we'd let you know.
So we'll start then, just start it the same way.
Yeah, we'll start the same way. See how we
wanted to
still feel
talk about how you felt about going into the collision and how that changed the trajectory of the course
in
a number of ways.
Right.
Just in the actual act of having a collision, by setting a particular goal, which we sort of tentatively suggested at the moment that there would be after the collision there would be pieces to be picked up and then put into something
like curated.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my basic initial feeling was that I developed relationships, to make it simple, with my group, and that there's something. I mean, it's more than just like I was used to these fellows. It was that there's something essential, something important, something of import or significance to the fact that certain people utter certain things at certain moments. Something about you, about Lyle, there's something else, something about Anthony and Joshua and Paul and whoever, that for me it's you that said it, that worked with me in a specific situation on a specific problem. I don't always know what that is. It's not just that I'm comfortable, it's that I assume that there is, and it's not just cultural capital, like, oh, if somebody says it, I'll believe it, or I'll listen more, although I'm sure that happens. It's that there's something that I haven't isolated, but that I just assume as like an operating hypothesis, important about it being certain things were said by certain people that inform my understanding of that thing. And I think, like I said earlier, I don't think that that's alien to being significant about ARC, because it's collaboratory. And I also don't think that ultimately it was a bad thing that I felt unsettled in a way. I think that it performed precisely the sort of shattering, it's a very collision-like thing to happen, you know, in the context of smashing two things together. That ended up being the way we hypothesized it would be, that it would be like a collision. And it sort of set me aback a bit, but it was good. And I think it was good ultimately because I saw the cohesiveness of what we had all smashed together. You know, I mean, I could see the pathway from how we started in the semester to what we ended up with. Even though I was gone for a week, around the time we first started colliding, the concept work that somebody else had done in a different constellation than I had originally worked with people doing it, followed an odd logic of its own, that if it were viewed outside like a film, you saw us talking about all of these things and then saw where it ended up, it would not read as a cohesive conceptual pathway. But for me being implicated in the process, I was really blown away. And I guess it's the kind of the opposite of unsettling, is the sort of comfort of seeing not necessarily something produced that we can now use, but seeing the logic of the process itself play out in a way that I could continue to engage with and be a part of, I guess.
What you say, I mean, it's very interesting to think about the way that the feelings at that moment of the impending collision and in the process of the collision, because I think it was at that moment that the relationships of collaboration, subjectivation, veridiction were shifted.
Yeah.
Because, so to repeat a little bit about what I said in the last video,
Yeah.
it seems that within the Labinar space, there's not just one kind of collaboration that's going on. So that on the one, so first of all, we have in many of the Labinars, but maybe all of them, I don't know, all the ones I think that I've been in, there's been a period where there's been breaking into small groups, and then there's been coming back to the full group in some way. And I feel this time, maybe more than others, we've more explicitly tried to organize or configure how that movement from the small groups to the large overall group is going to take place.
Right.
But definitely there's a different sensibility in that movement, because in the small groups, we all came with our individual research projects, but also various kinds of commitments and interests and imaginations. And when we were in this small group, basically we organized how we were going to do inquiry around things that we were, somehow there was something drawing us towards this.
Yeah.
But the broader collision, it wasn't about that per se. And so it's at that moment where there's a movement from a certain level of sort of interested inquiry towards maybe a different kind of inquiry and a different kind of truth statement that can then be made.
Right, yeah. Which would explain why it's difficult to translate what and how it is said in the lab outside of the space of the lab. Right? And people say, what do you do there?
Yeah.
And man, I mean, if you came and saw it, if you came and participated, then, well, you can't even say that. You can't say that anyway. But yeah, I've heard stories of people showing up and then leaving because it's difficult.
Well, but then you, on the other hand, you have people like Roy who say, I came in, I didn't understand anything, and that was that was what brought me in. So you have to have there may be a certain kind of
crazy,
like ability, or not ability.
Say proclivity?
Maybe proclivity, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I felt similar to Roy. I now know this is a bad metaphor, but the language of Ars Technica and art in the Labinar was essentially like a foreign language to me at first. But for some reason, I decided to take this as a litmus test for it being worth further looking at. I mean, I should just say that it was a sign, personally, and I think Roy had the same experience. I think a lot of people do. I don't know, but there's like a problem of translation there.
But maybe, yeah, and I mean, who knows? I don't expect that this film as an output would be something that it would suddenly be persuasive to people, and I don't think that's necessarily the purpose. I see this much more as a documentation, which then accomplishes this movement to a different level, like I'm saying, like a different level of what collaboration is, and how the relationships of inquiry are structured to produce a different kind of claim, which would be different from what's possible in these small groups.
Well, it seems like we're navigating between the capture and the exhibit.
Okay.
Capture, in terms of capturing, it's a tool for us. So the important thing is that we do exactly, that we move towards something like what you're talking about, because we're not going to show the film and then someone's going to be like, oh, I get there's this kind of inquiry now,
Mm.
probably the opposite, but
Mm.
for us, which is all I really care about right now, for those implicated in it, then implicated is in taking part and growing and thinking through it and with it. It's this capture, and the other side is the exhibit, and that to me is the really experimental aspect and exciting. I almost want to tell people this will be really boring. This will be very boring for you.
Yeah.
And confusing. And I mean, as a part of the experiment, prime people.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be, man. I mean, you can almost like predict the spectrum of responses, but that's what's fun about it. I think.
Yeah, I mean, it would be. Yeah, I mean, I think it's something worth seeing what would happen, and like, yeah, it's hard to say how. I mean, to me, seeing the video, like I was saying, it seems surprisingly coherent compared to the experience of. I mean, if you have everything that's going on in the class, and sometimes from moment to moment, it feels maybe distant, or this thing doesn't quite fit how I expected.
Yeah, or dissonant.
Or
Yeah.
dissonant, yeah. But I think distilling parts of it from the whole, you actually see now there was a coherent thread. But yeah, whether other people can see that, I don't know.
Seems like this is one of those instances. I'd like to think of the audience as the comment section once this is publicly posted to YouTube, and the comment section and the film itself as part of the same functionary form as working towards understanding what we're doing or opening up possibilities of doing it more, different, or however they unfold.
And I think this apprehension, which we talked about, I think, in the last video, but it's kind of an interesting thing, structuring also, like, because Paul said it's an affect thing as well as a knowledge term.
Yeah.
Knowledge verb.
That's really interesting. I have it.
And so you can, it's maybe a guiding mood of the overall webinar, as well as the term, or as well as the film.
Yeah.
Might be to producing kind of apprehensiveness.
Right, because
it's a success.
Yeah, you were talking about that earlier. I didn't even think about that, because the sort of the thing about apprehension that we were talking about is that it's, on one hand, it's that moment of initial confrontation or interface with an object or anything. Apprehension. I now apprehend this. On the other hand, it has the connotation of like an anxiety. I'm apprehensive about that. And of course, the etymology kind of suggests that there's something about our subjectivity that has come to make it so that the apprehension of any new object is sort of what a priori apprehensive, anxious.
Interesting, yeah. We're apprehensive about knowing.
About the interface. I'm scared of new knowledge or something like this, but also prehension, like prehension, like prehensile tail, like prehension. And it kind of calls to mind, to me, the whole idea of to know. When I talk about knowing, when I'm thinking about inquiry in terms of literary work, how is it that we know a text? The common adage is know in the biblical sense. You know, this idea of like intimate knowledge, or like getting inside and understanding, versus know as a verb for the kind of inquiry we do. We're going to get around and know this together. You know what I mean? And apprehension playing a part in that first phenomenological move. I've got a couple texts now that I was working on that maybe we can write down later.
Okay.
that might help with that. So. Let's play 15, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, we
Okay.
should stop it before it crashes.
See, I pushed stop recording.
But if you, okay, just now move your thing away now, because...
This is on.
Wait, why doesn't it stop, though?
I didn't click it.
Okay.